G'day legends. Now, firstly, a little bit of housekeeping. I had to use my floodlights for work yesterday and I forgot to charge them last night, so we've just got I've got one light. I usually have a couple of lights set up so the videos look a little bit nicer, but not today. And I really wanted to make this video, so it was either skip it because the lighting wasn't perfect or just push on with me looking like I'm in a terror cell or something, you know? But so we're gonna push ahead. It's better to have this than no video at all. Okay, so today's video is going to be about Netflix saying no to the UFC, right? Which is very, very interesting because it's been like in the general zeitgeist of the UFC that, of course, we're just naturally heading over to Netflix, right? Now that our ESPN deal is done. And I love how MMA fans talk about the sport. Now that we're done with ESPN, we're all heading over to Netflix, boys. We're like one big blob. We're like a block of human beings, you know what I mean? We're like one big family, the MMA fan base. Except we have a little bit of infighting. We have a little bit of infighting over who's the GOAT, you know, whether or not it's John Jones because of all the steroids he does. John Jones does steroids, a lot of them. But in general, apart from a little bit of infighting, the MMA community is fairly moving in one direction. Of course, we just assumed that we're all heading over to Netflix. I mean, why not? Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson was on Netflix. The NFL has had a couple of shows on Netflix. The TKO group, our father group, the WWE is on Netflix. Obviously, we're on our way over to Netflix. It just makes sense, of course. And how much are we selling this beautiful product to Netflix for? Just for the affordable price of $1 billion per year? That's what the UFC is looking for their next TV rights deal or their next broadcast partnership deal. I know Netflix isn't technically television, it's subscription, but it's the lucky girl that gets to take home the UFC. They're looking for $1 billion per year. Now, while that might sound like a lot of money to some of us in the MMA community, I know there's a lot of you gamblers out there that shit out $1 billion a year, but to some of us in the MMA community, $1 billion a year sounds like a lot of money. I'm sure that doesn't sound like a lot of money to something like Netflix. That's completely affordable, $1 billion a year. So we have a show, they have money, this must be a done deal. Well, not so fast, right? The Netflix CEO has scoffed at the UFC, and they're not really interested in going for a UFC package or $1 billion a year deal. Check out this bit of news here. During a recent investors call, Sanders avoided directly addressing the UFC or any specific sports, right? But he did relate Netflix's current strategy, which is prioritizing one-off events over full season sports deals. Said we remain focused on big breakthrough events, so anything we chase in the event space or sports space is that they would have to make economic sense as well. Live is a small part of our content spend. We have about 200 billion view hours, so small relative to view hours as well. So let us break this down in just a couple of ways, okay? This makes absolute bloody sense on behalf of Netflix. For number one, the UFC product itself, right? Just envision it with me. Come on a journey with me, boys. Do you really think that it is worth $1 billion a year? I mean, most of the UFC events, maybe if not half, at least close to half of the UFC events per year are at the small but mighty apex, yeah? And let's say the UFC does, it changes every year, but let's say on average around 47 events per year. So let's say like a little under half of those events happen at the apex. Let's be generous and say there's about 20 apex events per year. You are asking Netflix to spend $50 million for an apex event. $50 million for Blanchfield versus Barber. $50 million Blanchfield versus Barber with Dustin Jacoby as the co-main event, or Shamil the Blob Gazia versus Rosenstrike, or fucking Tai Tuivasa versus who gives a shit. That is what you are asking them to spend $50 billion on per event. And you could say, oh, Dougie, it's not as easy as that. You know, you could chuck in some pay-per-views as well. Yeah, you can chuck in a couple of pay-per-views, you know, like great pay-per-views like UFC 297. Who could forget that one with the great Rip Raquel Pennington as the co-main event, and Neil Magny in the feature fight. Yeah, what a great pay-per-view. That's worth $50 million, isn't it? What about UFC 307? Sorry to jump on Raquel Pennington's back again, but again, even the main event is Alex Pereira versus someone coming off a drug suspension. Now, in hindsight, great fight. Main event, the main fight was a great fight. It was, but again, on paper, you've got Alex Pereira versus someone who shouldn't have been fighting Alex Pereira. As the co-main event, you got Raquel Pennington. Absolutely disgusting. You had Mario Batista holding holding Jose Aldo up against the cage, yeah? You got I really don't care about my career, Kevin Holland, and then another WMMA event as the kickoff to the pay-per-view. This is not worth $50 million. What about the mighty UFC 309? John Jones versus a 4-year retired Stipe Miocic and Paul Bloody Craig in the feature fight, plus a women's fight on there as well. Like, these fights, these pay-per-views are not worth $50 million either. I'm sorry to say it, but when you look at the product that the UFC has generally delivered over the last 2 years alone, which, all the UFC can do is go back on some of their great successes in the past. But let's face it, the golden age of the UFC, it's over, boys. It is over. Like, the product that we are getting is not worth $50 million a week, right? Especially if we continue with the pay-per-view model inside of Netflix, yeah? People are just going to continue to find a way to watch it for free, yeah? I watched Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson. I watched the main event, yeah? I didn't watch it on Netflix, if you know what I mean. So Netflix either pays for the full whack of the shows and puts them on their platform without a pay-per-view. If they did that, I'd pay the $11 a month or however much Netflix costs. But if they put it behind a paywall, like say Netflix Plus, in which case, guess what? If it's behind a paywall on Netflix Plus, I already know how to stream it for free, mate. Suck a fat one, Netflix. Suck a fat one. So for Netflix, if they want to do one-off events, that makes way more sense. Way more sense. There's less chance of losing money on one event at a time. And if these events start to not go so well, like if people get sick of the circus that is influencer boxing, you can just pivot. And you can do that whenever you want. It gives you freedom to move around rather than paying for a long-term deal, a 7-year or a 5-year deal with a track record of serving up hot plates of shit. The other thing is, of course, that we need to take into consideration here is that these companies, they don't mind spending money, but they do it when they're putting out woke garbage that is there to propagandize the Western audience. It's because it is a propaganda campaign, yeah? We know this, right? Whenever Netflix makes something, they race swap the original protagonist. Like recently, there was a whole bunch of going on around the world, and they took the person that was doing the whole and race swapped him for the documentary. They do it all the time, right? A couple of famous detectives, swap it up. Yeah, so companies like Disney and Netflix, they're happy to just shovel out truckloads of cash into the message, you know what I mean? It's not TV programming anymore just because it's not on TV anymore, but let us not pretend for a second that most of what you see in the media is just one big propaganda machine that is being pumped out by the CIA to control Western culture. That is what printing money is for, ladies and gentlemen. If you can't try and mind control your own population, why else would you have a money printing machine? But that is what Netflix is for, yeah? And Dana White has been very open in the past. Very open in the past. I wish I had the time to scour through previous Dana White interviews and find him saying this. But he has been very open about how he wants to control his product completely. When he went into negotiations with Fox, he said, we need to be able to control the product. We know how to run a show for MMA properly so you don't overbloat it and put too much stuff on the screen. He said the same thing to ESPN. We need to be able to send you the TV signal from the truck and you broadcast that, but we are in control of the show. Which means that Netflix, not only do they have to shovel out $50 million for Blanchfield versus Barber at the Apex, but they're not even allowed to swap Lorosenko with Whoopi Goldberg or tell us that GSP is the greatest black fighter of all time. So again, you are asking Netflix to pay $50 million for an Apex card, and Netflix can't even control the product of the event. Netflix can't control the production, they can't control the commentators, they can't control what card is being served up to them. Dana White is going up to one of the biggest broadcasters in the world, and he is essentially saying, hey, I'm gonna take a giant shit in your hand, which is the quality of these cards these days. And also, I know that you guys are super left-wing and woke, but about every 6 months, I'd like to run a Trump rally in the middle of the card for no fucking reason. No, and on top of all that, I'd like you to pay for it. That's the other thing, right? The Trump rallies. Like, we all in the general MMA community are like, NBA players kneeling for the national anthem. Oh, soccer athletes kneeling for the national anthem. Keep politics out of my sports. I just want to enjoy the content. I'm sick of the message. I just want to enjoy. Oh, look, Trump's coming into the arena. Like, it's... Don't get me started. But either way, you know what I am saying, right? And then Dana expects Netflix to pay for this. Believe it or not, guys, but Netflix have politely said, get fucked. They said, get fucked. I mean, I was caught up in the wave of, we're going to Netflix. As an MMA fan, I was caught up in this. But the moment that Netflix pushed back, the moment that I saw the original news article yesterday of the CEO saying no sense, it immediately became perfectly clear and obvious to me as to why Netflix would not be interested in this shit deal if I was sitting in their shoes. Their ideology, their financials, their business model. It would be such a horribly fucking bad investment for Netflix to take on the UFC when you think about it from Netflix's point of view for just a second. The sheer fucking hubris of Dana White and the UFC to walk around with half of their events at the Apex and one good pay-per-view per quarter if someone doesn't pull out, please, like... Again, Arman Sarukian versus Islam Makhachev was ruined by Arman Sarukian. International Fight Week has no fucking main event at all. They barely scraped together one good pay-per-view per fucking quarter, and Dana White has got the audacity to walk around and ask for $1 billion a year. I'd be telling Dana to get fucked too. I would. I'd be saying, fucking don't ever fucking call me again, Dana White. No, you are insane. There is no way I'm giving you $1 billion a year for that garbage. Garbage is what they're serving up, and they expect to get paid. Unbelievable. Anyway, obviously now you can see why I thought I really needed to get this video out there, because I don't think anyone has thought about this from Netflix's point of view yet. So it makes total sense. If this is your first time here, g'day, welcome. My name is Dougie. I make an MMA video every single day of the week, Monday through Friday, and I try and go live at least 3 times a week. So hit that subscription button and that notification bell down there if you enjoyed this video. The lighting's usually slightly better, but this is essentially the quality of the video, so this is what you're getting. Leave a comment down there. Where do you think the UFC should try and spruce their wares? Who do you think will pay $1 billion a year for half their shows at the Apex? Let me know down there in the comments. What do you think about that? If you enjoyed this video, do leave it a like. That would really help it. And if you're one of the paying members of the channel, thank you so much. I appreciate all of you. I will see you all in the next one. Bye. Goodbye.